think,
You can stay in your delusion. You can stay in your crib. You can stay in your feedback. You can stay beyond your welcome. Go out back, find the alligator. Go out front with the machine gun. Tell everyone how nice they are. I don't know you, not anymore. I don't know you, not anymore. 'Cause when I asked you, everything was fine. When I asked you, all was divine.
Irrational, repetitious.
You were deluded. Deluded. You were deluded. You were deluded. I would like to know what went wrong back then. Why do they all stare? You made me into a pariah because I wouldn't lie. You made me an outcast because I wouldn't be your little bitch. Your little bitch. You made me a liar because you all lied.
Shotguns are out.
And now I'm not going to listen. Not anymore. I made you into a scarecrow. You tame the alligator with your machine.
okay, let's call her. Hi, everybody. This is Portal to Justice, Window to the Truth. Hi. And
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. Okay, we're starting off from scratch. We're live.
Yeah, they love to interfere with us, Amelia.
All right, let's just let them do it. Let them have
Let's do it. Let's do it, right?
Yeah.
So I, in the interim, a friend of mine sent me the video of Ryan Bundy getting out of unlawful incarceration on the 13th.
That would have been me.
Yeah. Well, I was really, I have a friend who sent it to me like a while ago, but I haven't really had time, but I'm hoping.
Was it Laz? Are you friends with Laz? Lazaro?
I probably am, but I think it was a friend of mine that knows him, and I was just really, when I was watching it, I was hoping and thinking that maybe the tide is finally turning our way, because as we speak about this, there's a lot of people who are in this, embroiled in this fraud of our government, that don't know it and that don't understand that they've been complicit in crimes against humanity, and or at least the perpetuation of crimes against humanity and the perpetration, and also crimes against the American people, and operating unlawfully, because they've been listening to a whole bunch of people who are not learned in the law, that run around trying to say they are the law. And that's the bar unions of this country. And it's amazing to me that they even call themselves lawyers. I mean, because they're really not lawyers. They don't advertise as lawyers because they can't. They're not lawyers. They're attorneys, which are two totally different things. But it always amazes me about the arrogance of these attorneys who say, I'm the law. I actually had the administrator in my kangaroo court case say, I'm the law. And I said, no, you're not. And they don't even understand the foundations of our government. To even anyone who has that come out of their mouth, that the bar unions are the law, a guy wearing a black Pharisee's robe is the law, that is not America. America, the people are the law. The fourth branch, which is the most important branch. So we're the last branch, but we're the branch that creates all the other three. We created the executive branch. We created the legislature. We create the judiciary. We are the judiciary. We are the highest judiciary. We are the people. So people have been listening because they've been miseducated and indoctrinated and programmed to believe that when an attorney tells you something, that it's the law. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And so you have all these people in government, and even attorneys have been misguided in this. And, as I always say, not every cop is bad, not every judge is bad, quote unquote judge, which they're just administrators, but not every, sheriff is bad, not every attorney is bad, they're not all bad. You have them hiding within these groups of people. Yeah, you have to find, you pay attention to, go ahead.
No, this is so true. I mean, some of these police officers and attorneys and within our government, they have taken the red pill. They've seen the reality, if you will, behind the reality, or behind the curtain. And this is powerful. It's a powerful awakening, and our voices are so crucial. Because
and also we've also been very and I'm just on the tail end of this. From my understanding, the Freeman movement started 40 or 50 years ago, and they started from the sons of men who knew what had happened during the Federal Reserve Act and during the turn of the century with the world wars, and saw the corruptions within the state, and knew that what was happening was unlawful. And as I've always said, to me, this is divine providence that was what was brought forth to show us, to allow us to root out the corruptions of men and women. And that it's not so much them by their deeds. It's not the suits they wear or the uniforms or the ones they don't. It's their deeds. And I think it's really, I'm hoping that people are starting to awaken to the truth of things and not the propaganda that we've had to deal with. And so it was really nice seeing Ryan Bundy, being basically exonerated for the crimes against his family.
And God help us. I hope they leave that poor family alone. And
they need to, because as far as I understand, they are a Lotus landholding family. They own sovereign inheritance, and they have the rights to those lands. And we've discussed on shows before, at least personally, I know that how everything,
I've had Lazaro on my show as a guest many times, and him and I have been friends for, oh my God, I think it's been like 4 years now.
Well, I mean, it's been a while, really. I mean, the thing about the Bundys and that whole issue is that people don't understand, and this goes back to there are trusts law that govern everything that happens in the world in law. And one of the first trusts that were created was the will of the people, which is the Constitution, which created a trust, a land trust. Then the next really pivotal trust is the Judicial Act of 1789, which created the statutory courts of the United States, which have a de jure grant of law. But they only have a de jure grant of law when they operate within the confines of that grant of law of the de jure government, the United States of America Republic, in a Congress assembled that created that statutory grant. And then the next trust of law comes with the Treaty of Amity and Peace after the War of 1812, which was the pivot line after we lawfully passed the titles of nobility, which actually, having a title of nobility and holding a position of trust or power in our government has been against our governmental law, the fourth crown of law, since the inception of the Republic. The 13th title of nobility, all it did was give you a penalty. So it actually, the way the law works, you can have something that says you can't do something, but if you have no penalty, it's not enforceable. And that's the way the law is. So when people read statutes on the books, like the ones that say you cannot operate in commerce with a placard and say you are an attorney, blah, 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 but there's no penalty. Whenever there's a statute that says something is unlawful, but it gives no penalty, it's unenforceable. That is law. Okay, so attorneys like to leave those really vague statutes out there and act like they can enforce those. They can't. Mm-hmm. So the purpose of the Titles of Nobility Amendment was to make something that had already been affirmed twice in the Northwest Ordinance and in the Constitution enforced by giving it a penalty. Mm-hmm. So that's another, and that's where the two constitutions that we now operate under, which very few people know about. I would say that attorneys understand it less than anybody because they are educated in a very narrow band and taught to follow rules and procedures and not look at the law that they are derived from. And they do that, and that's called an ens legis instrument, which means an instrument that is a creation of statute. And so in the corporate construct of law, the attorneys, the United States Corporation, the states of X, which are all corporate charters and corporate franchises, and even the United States Corporation Company, which all the 50 states hold state franchises as transferring utilities. The United States Corporation Company, if you look at your Secretary of State, will exist in each of your states and your territories. And it will be a state franchise. And if you look at and if you actually reverse, research it, you'll find it ends up in Delaware. That it ends up that the agent that controls it all isn't all in like Wilmington, Delaware. So the Delaware Company. So they all derive from the Delaware Company. And those United States Corporation Company franchises collectively, probably as the shareholders create the United States Corporation. So that is, kind of I always call it a Ponzi scheme because they're operating in trust law that hasn't been cured yet. Mm-hmm. So, the United States Corporation is like the first Ponzi scheme, really. But it's about to be cured by us because we're bringing the two pillars, the two constitutions, back into the mindset of the people. And the people hopefully are understanding there is corporate law in our crown, the fourth crown of law, and there is a natural law. And that's the natural evolution of law that's been evolving since pretty much Yeshua established the trust that we've talked about whenever the 30 silver pieces bounty that Judas returned for fraud, was thrown into the land.
Yeah, before we go there, because I really want to go into that a little bit more in depth. So for people just now tuning into the show, just share with us a little premise about yourself a little bit. Introduce.
Well, I would say.
I didn't do it. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
We've been doing this show for how long?
Well, I think it's been over a year because I think, did we do it after I think it's been about a year. But did I know you before I got done with my sabbatical and my unlawful imprisonment? I don't think I did. Did I?
I think it was after.
Right after, whenever you started doing.
It was around December of last year sometime.
Right, January, the beginning of last year.
Yeah.
Or end of last year. Yeah, so I remember. Yeah, so it's been about a year, and I think you and I came into contact because of the work I was doing for Clay, and trying to free him from his basic kidnapping. He was kidnapped by the state, And we have a lot of mutual friends with Brian Kenter and the National Organization for Parental Equality, and really good people, and a lot
movement,
judicial accountability movement. And the funny thing is, those instruments, most of those come from Ohio, because Ohio is very, very corrupt. and the Freeman movement, like I said, I'm just basically at the tail end of a movement that, from what I understand, started about 30 or 40 years ago, where all these freemen were basically saying, you do realize, you're not following the law. And they started exercising their rights under the Constitution, and were horribly persecuted. And a lot of them were murdered, assassinated by the powers that be, because they were exposing the law. And they were also bringing forth case law and history of law. And this was before the internet. So then the internet comes around, and people really start being able to look at these documents of history, the documented history of the Constitution, the documented history of the United States, the annals of Congress. I mean, you could go to a library and maybe find them, but kind of at the same time, while the Freemen were trying to explain that these things were happening, there were all these other common law groups that were coming into being. The libraries that were the law libraries that were established to preserve the law were throwing law books away, literally, in thousands.
At the time when I met you, I think it was briefly, it was a short period after I had joined forces with Brian Kenter and the Judicial Accountability Movement, which formed the PTJ and JAM.
Right.
I think we met right after that time period.
Right. And I met Brian through my friend Mike Galuzzo, who does National Organization for Parental Equality. He's been doing that for 10 or 15 years, So, and that came about because of his alienation from his children and his divorce with child custody. And so things are kind of culminating where all these kind of knowledge bases are coming together. And I've always been kind of focused more on the law of it.
Yeah, I'm just kind of waiting for everybody to come to that.
Yeah, they're kind of catching up with me, I think. I think that they're finally...
because in the porthole to justice, we're not male or female. And we have the
Right.
women's movement, and we have the men's movement, or father's rights movement, which is really powerful. Right. And, but in the porthole to justice, I'm kind of small, and I'm kind of unknown, and I don't really have a voice. And I don't. I'm different, and from all of those movements, because I
I think that's probably what drew me to you, because here I am dealing with a case where someone that I love dearly has had their child totally kidnapped from them. And I think that when we discussed your history one time, you discussed how you had been targeted by fraudulent criminal claims against you, and it took you 3 years. Your son was taken from you, and I think that's one of the biggest voices for me that is unheard, because there are so many women.
Yeah, I disagree with that it's a father's rights issue or a woman's issue, because
no, it's a child's rights issue, really. Yeah. I mean, it's really children's rights, and it's parents and
gravitate to the porthole to justice necessarily, because they're looking to unify with either father's rights or mother's rights, and I'm somewhere.
Well, I think that
I'm fighting the corruption and the fraud on the court.
You're fighting the corruption, but in a bigger way, you're fighting the corruption because you're still targeted by them, and them still trying to take your son. It's like it's this constant battle. I mean, it's until we totally rout them out. I think that certain people are always going to be harassed, and they just can't get out of it. I mean, to be honest with you, every woman that I know that has ever had issues with custody is still being harassed. Even when their children are almost of legal age, or 18, they're being harassed.
Yeah, and it's a way of siphoning money off you until the child is of age.
And even after that, they even bother you. I mean,
my case has been closed since 2013, but I'm $7 grand. As of 2013, all the way up until present day, I'm $7 grand into the attorney.
$7 grand.
Yeah.
Right. And that $7 grand is basically probably just kept you in the loop, really, because that's their job as attorneys. So to me, it's more of a women's issue. I know that the men got upset because they felt
feed this beast just to stay out of their slave trade.
Well, right, and the interesting thing about because I spoke with Mike about his history history with his children, and he understood that it was really an institutional issue, that he was definitely targeted as a father, but when he started to understand what I know to be the law, he understood that it was really an institutionalized system that used the family. What attorneys do, and this is their job. Attorneys are there to take advantage of the divisive nature of divorces or relationships between mothers and fathers and or families, and steal the children within those in that. And the same thing goes for when you have a family and your father dies and you can't seem to settle the will without an attorney. All the attorney is going to do is take advantage of the divisive nature of your inability to work with your family unit and steal all the estate of the dead person, and you'll end up losing it all. Well, they really aren't there to resolve your...
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing with my case. Even though I was residing here in Texas for a year, and I filed in federal court the papers that we wrote up, California has taken jurisdiction.
Well, I'd like to know how they got it, since neither you or your son are residents of that state, and you definitely aren't tenants of that state. The only potential thing they're even claiming to have custody over is the Susticate Trust that the attorneys in the state of California itself created by the fraudulent creation of the birth certificate trust. I mean, people have to understand, you have people that when your children are born create a trust for you, and without you knowing it, create a trust for your child that is a world banking trust. It is a Susticate trust. Yeah, that's what the Social Security number is. Actually, the Social Security number, if you read the Social Security number, your actual Social Security card, it says this number was established for the all capital name. And so they create the all capital thing, which is a trust, and then they assign it a number in the Social Security, and then they go about claiming they own your actual physical flesh of your child because they created a trust that they're operating their corruption on. So they come after your children because they've leveraged them for their activities. And that's what people really don't understand. And that's vassaldom. And that trust needs to be cured, because right now, when you look in the naturalization laws, children have the right to declare themselves a national of a state versus a United States citizen, but in Title VIII between the ages, I think, 14 and 19. Now, why would your children have a right?
I mean,
go ahead.
You know, because we worked on the filing together.
Right.
I filed to combat the Rucker-Feldman prior to the hearing in Los Angeles.
Right.
Yet, however, and let's assume it's unbeknownst to them that they know about the filing in federal court in the Republic of Texas.
Right.
Let's assume they still assume jurisdiction, and this is how California is currently operating. I mean, it's so it's incredible.
Well, California isn't even a state. California isn't even lawfully a republic state. The United States went into rebellion after the Treaty of Peace and Amity of 1812, and the Oregon Territory and the Spanish Territory were bought after that when we were in rebellion under a de facto government. Nothing past the Louisiana Purchase is a lawful republic state. It's never been brought into the Union by a Congress assembled. Mm-hmm. And so those are totally territorial corporate entities operated by the BLM under the auspices of the United States Corporation Company. The state of California is a mere corporation managing lands held in trust by the Republic United States of America.
Oh my
See,
gosh,
people
this
don't.
Is so scary because this is a BLM we're talking about. This is BLM, and I'm like, oh my God. They're so
well, that's the whole thing with the Bundys.
Yeah.
The Bundys hold the Lodale land title to that land,
100 years
and
they own the land title.
Exactly. And so then you have a corporate overlay of a corporate territorial overlay, the state of, which is what they are, trying to manage lands that they never bought. Okay, They never bought it. The money that was that purchased Oregon territories and Spanish territories are republic coffers. And again, those are merely, when this is all corrected, we actually have to go back and have an Congress assembled who ratifies those states as states of the republic. Because right now, all they are is corporate overlays.
Lazaro, who is a very good friend of mine, is actually reporting all this and has been investigative reporting on all of this, and he's subpoenaed all of the court documents, and hopefully he's going to be coming out and doing an interview with myself, and
well, it's really easy to prove that fact when I tell you, anybody who just wants to go look these kind of bizarre facts up is go look at the border of the Louisiana Territory prior to the Texas Purchase, prior to the Republic of Texas being brought into the Union, and then go look at a BLM management map and put it on top of each other. Literally put the maps on top of each other, cut out the Republic of Texas, and I'm going to tell you, the borders of the Louisiana Purchase are where the edge of the BLM land starts, because they're under the field of blood. They're under a susticate. People have to understand, a susticate trust is created in law every time there is a rebellion or disagreement of the people, and that includes when they crucified Yeshua. If you read the Bible in the original tongues, Pontius Pilate said...
So when we read this, though, explain to the layman how we incorporate this into the law, because this is a very important topic.
Well, the way the law... Okay, we're dealing with banking. Okay, we're dealing with the laws of men. Okay, go ahead.
Wait a second. This is actually what defines... people will always say, well, but, we have the Buddha, and we have the Shiva, and we have all of these alternative religious...
Well, yeah, I understand. Those are spiritual constructs.
Yeah, spiritual.
Right.
We have all of these other spiritual concepts, but what makes Jesus...
What makes Yeshua special?
Exactly.
What makes Yeshua special is he was an advocate for those who did not agree with the occupation of the Pharisees as the church of the Hebrew people, and or any of the different sects of the Hebrew of the people of the region, or with the occupation of the Roman cult, the cult of Rome, occupying the lands, because, as we've discussed, Rome would come into a region and they would go to the chieftains or the kings and say, we're going to bring our commercial overlay upon you, our banking structure, and you can either agree to use it and let us charge you a tithe, and you'll use our roads, and you'll let us build roads, and you'll use our administrative processes and all this stuff. And if you don't, we're just going to kill you and appoint a prefect. And that's what they did. If you understand the history of Rome, that's what they did everywhere. And so you had these poor, well, they're not poor, but you had the people who'd lived there for generations. And then you had this overseen military cult of men running around with swords and golden breastplates and, thinking they're this and that, the Eye of Horus keepers, whatever, and oppressing these military corporate constructs, these military banking constructs is really what they were. Business constructs, Babylonian slave trade even. And they ran upon a slave trade system, and people could be bought and sold, and they would go in war in regions and create slaves and this and that and the other thing. And these people were saying, you're not our kings, you're not our masters, you're not our moral guide, you aren't our governance. And what Yeshua did is he was pulled in there against his will and said, I don't care what you do to me, you are not my king. You are not my my church. You Pharisees, you are not the keepers of my spirituality, you Pharisees, and you, Rome, are not my masters. You're not my king, and I do not follow your Caesar. Mm-hmm. You are not who guide me in my morality. My kingdom and my God is not of this world, and is not made of men and women, or men at that time, who are born of malfeasance and corruption. And you clearly are. You do not. You are. He was basically saying, I'm not going to judge you, but I'm going to tell you, you don't get to judge me, and you don't get to tell me what to do, because I'm a moral man and I'm righteous, and you aren't. And you don't get to bring me here and judge me because you're not my judge. I mean, that's really what the trial of Jesus was about, Yeshua was about, is he was being judged. When you think about it, he was brought into court by the Pharisees for creating a miracle on the Sabbath. So he gave a woman her health and her sight back by a miracle from God, and the spiritual leaders of the time wanted him put to death for it. And that's what he was put to death for. Jesus was put to death for curing an old woman of her sight on a day that those people who sold, who were in the temples affecting banking, said that he should be put to death for. Mm-hmm. So Yeshua was put to death by bankers because he was actually a true prophet. And he was brought forth to the Roman courts, and the Roman court said, we have no jurisdiction over this man, and we find no fault in him. He's innocent. And they said, oh, he says he's our king, which he never said he was a king. He said he had a kingdom greater than theirs. He was from a different kingdom, and they were mocking him. And so, they represent him. That's the point of being represented. You are represented by attorneys. You're not presented by attorneys. They are your representatives, which means they represent you. They don't present you. They represent you as something other than you are, which is you are being represented as their minion, as their vassal, as their ward. You're not being presented as a man or a woman. You're being presented as a thing, represented as a thing. And so, they go and dress him up in a crown of thorns and a purple sash. So they gave him a crown and they gave him the color of nobility. And he says, behold the man, an innocent man. And they still wanted him, and he gave him a choice. Do you want me to murder him, though he's an innocent man who's done nothing by the law? Or do you want us to free this Barabbas, right, who's a murderer and a horrible person? And they said, free the murderer, because this man is worse, because he was challenging the authority of the state to control him and when he could work for the true God. Think about that. He was murdered for working for the true God. Not the fake God, not the fake Elohims, the Pharisees and Caesar. He was working for the true God who brought miracles. And so they had to murder him. And what Rome said at that time is he let him be murdered because of atonement. In the old language, in the old script, so he was an advocate that was murdered because of atonement. Atonement is an uprising. So the Pharisees, by bringing Yeshua to a false claim.
Okay, I just want to get to the point. I'm sorry. Forgive me.
That's okay. The point is atonement is an uprising.
A person like me that comes before the court, and I say, well, and the admiralty courts, will try to claim jurisdiction.
Which are commerce courts. Yeah. Those are commerce courts.
I say, you are not my ruler. You're not my king. My king is my God, which is
right, Yeshua. Right.
So, what does that mean?
Okay, well, they're offering that to the Muslims who want to trade babies. Yeah. They're creating Sharia law courts.
Muslims, but they're not offering it to us.
They're not offering it to the true followers of Christ, because that's kind of the point. The true followers the reason why they're offering it to the Muslims is because the Muslims, not the false followers of Christ, the true followers of Christ. The false followers of Christ are the ones running around saying they're Christians running your government. Mm-hmm. The reason why they don't have a problem with the Muslim Sharia law courts is because that's what they're already affecting upon you in their little black robes, saying that they're a Christian nation judiciary. That's not a Christian judiciary you're sitting before. You are sitting before old Pharisees, Babylonian slave trade, administrative commercial law, where you are a thing and considered the property of the state. The reason why it flows right into Sharia law is because that's what Sharia law is. Mm-hmm. In Sharia law, they go, oh, well, go ahead and go. You can have your own. All they're basically doing is saying, oh, you guys go have your own little judges over there, because you're really affecting the same commerce law we are, where you can trade babies and marry off little children and have multiple, do whatever you want. Where women and children are the property of the male-dominated estate. That's the cult of Rome. The Muslims are literally just in my opinion, Jesuits. They're just Jesuits of an order. So we have a right. We have a right. If they have a right to their Sharia law, we have a right to the true common law of America, which is founded upon the true tenets of Yeshua.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy because they're like literally saying, well, we can practice this in our judiciary, in our schools, openly. And,
right.
And it's very disturbing, Lotus, what's occurring, because we're seeing the ACLU actively participate in smothering the Judeo-Christian values that the United States was.
That's because we all the other even the Sharia law deals with the Pope as the King of Kings. See, they don't want to recognize anybody who doesn't agree that the Pope is the Vicar of Christ and the King of Kings. The United States of America Republic states are considered heretical because we won't recognize that the Pope is the King of the world. Okay? The King of Kings. So Yeshua didn't agree with that. We don't have kings. We don't have kings on this earth.
So what we're witnessing is that there are locations everywhere, with Catholic Church priests,
right,
pedophiling our children.
Amelia, the Catholic Church. I wouldn't say. I'd say that the church. I'd say the Catholic Church. But even think about what they did to the Native Americans. Okay, go back to some pictures where they show.
That's the thing. If you look at most of the wars that succeeded in the past, that was the wars that were where they used sex as a weapon.
Right.
And we're actively using sex right now.
Right.
Sex and
rape. Because the rape and pillage of women. That's what you want.
And
the war against women, but you have to remember that the Roman Catholic Church is a heretical church. They are not the Church of Christ. They are the church. They are the cult of Rome that usurped the teachings of Christ, of Yeshua, so that they could try to domineer and rule the true followers of Christ. Mm-hmm. So what you're seeing is all of the prevailing states and religions, including the Zionism and the extreme forms of the Wasabi Muslims. Yeah. Those are all just extreme. Those are all, if you look at them, they all have the same thing in common. They all think women are subordinate and slaves, and that babies are the property of the state and the men, and they can do what they want with them. They can rape them. They can trade them. They can eat them. They can do what they want. These are all they have the same constructs of law, which is all founded upon misogynistic, Babylonian, warring cults of men who run around the world and bring mayhem and war and oppression upon women and children, and have no intention of ever promoting a civil, moral, peaceful society in the world. Okay, unless it's under their rule, and then they'll let you think you're at peace, but really they're not, because they're going to be warring somewhere within your culture to make all of you hate one another. They don't believe. So all of those, those are heretical to the teachings of Yeshua. Yeshua said, there are no men or women in this realm that have the authority over the morality of another man against his free will. Okay. In our country, it's called a jural society, which means we are a willful jural society. We have the right we have the right to remove ourselves as a United States citizen. We can remove ourselves. And guess what? They can't make us leave the borders. They can't make us leave. Okay? We have the right to cast aside the chains of an oppressive government. That's in the original grants of law that created it. Yet you have these judiciary who think that your child is their property without any consent from anybody. It's just a presumption that they own your child. That's not a free will dual society that believes in the tenets of Yeshua. That's Babylonian slave trade. People who think they own your children as property and are going to probate them in rim and quasi-rim actions, which is actions of, quote, the judiciary, where they talk about things and how they should be trafficked and moved in commerce, okay? Those are not people who are following true Christian tenets. Those are people following Babylonian slave trade.
I'm actively paying thousands of dollars to fight the state of California, because they want to take jurisdiction over me and my child.
That's because, why? They already wrapped his birth certificate in a treasury bond when he was born.
Yeah.
And it's sitting in the DTC in New York, and they don't even have the means. I'll tell you what. The state of California couldn't even produce the instrument, because here's the law when it comes to those presumptions. The law says that no state, and these are well established, no state or state of may operate in actions of things unless they had authority, meaning they had jurisdiction over the instrument. Okay, the state of California doesn't even hold jurisdiction over the instrument. They don't even own the instrument. They leveraged it. They gave it to the United States to create treasury bonds with it. They don't even own the instrument of the all capital name of your son anymore. So how do they don't even have jurisdiction in that. That's what's so messed up about this. These attorneys have been so miseducated and have such, and this is the worst part about it. I get that they're miseducated. I get it. I give them the benefit of the doubt that they are unlearned in the law. They established in Title 28 that no attorney is required to be learned in the law but one, and that's the acting Solicitor General. Acting. He's not the Solicitor General because it's unlawful for an attorney to occupy that office. So his title is really Acting Solicitor General. That's his title. He's acting as one. That's a key. That's a clue right there. So none of them are learned in the law. I get that. They make that disclaimer. But again, ignorance of the law is no excuse. And these attorneys and these administrators and these, quote, judges and these people that work for them, they sit and watch them every day do things that no moral person would think was lawful. Every day. And and that's the point. Yes, they're uneducated, but a lot of them are also morally vacant people to begin with. And that's why it's so easy for them to go, well, that's what the code tells me to do. Yeah, but the law says what you just did was a crime. Did you happen to read the law that all those statutes came from? And it's amazing to me when they want to argue that statutes are higher than the common law. Really? How'd you get that? If the common law established the legislative branch, which makes the statutes, how is the common law subordinate to the statutory law? How does that even work in a logical, reasoned sense? See, they even are absent of logic and reason when it comes to law.
We're building up on this precipice, Lotus, where we're going to have to go to war.
Well, what really is the fact is
they're actively operating against our president of the United States. Excuse me.
Right. Well, they're not just outright openly. They're not. This is one of the first times they've had a president where they feel, and this is their arrogance. They think that they could just be really belligerent and open with their crimes, with their sedition and treason. There's so much sedition and treason that has come out of the mouth of people openly on the record since Trump has been elected, and yet no one's being charged with it. No one's being charged with it at all. There's been open sedition against the current POTUS of the United States Corporation. Open sedition. Those people should have been put in chains and put in jail. Some of the stuff coming out of these people's mouths are crimes.
I will often post online in comments, and please, let's recap. No, not recap.
I understand what you're saying, but so we want to get back to.
Let's talk about du jour. Define du jour.
De jure means legitimate, with the will of the people. De jure means that the people that the law confirms that it is a lawful thing. Okay, it is within the law, not within the legal, within the established law. Okay, statutory law is not high law. Okay, that's not natural law. See, the beauty of the American common law is American common law is natural law. That's what we've done. American common law is organic, natural law. And it goes in line with Blackstone commentaries on the laws of England, who said that the law of men should be affected and operated and be as natural in its form and organic as the manner in which the way birds and bees and the all live in unit in harmony with nature. And Blackstone basically talks about how we are all God's creatures, and if we are God's creatures, then what we do should be in a natural balance and order of things, just like self-perpetuating. You don't see lions going and killing all the young and warring, right? You don't see animals do the things that humans do, because it's antithetical to the perpetuation of the species, and it throws nature out of balance. So Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England, where he defines the rights of things and the rights of persons, meaning people versus things. See, persons are not things. All capital persons are things, but you and I, as a flesh and blood person, may not be a thing under the common law. Under commercial law, they've tried to make you two things, because you hold incorporeal hereditaments, which are things, your free will, your intellectual property. These are things that are not corporeal, not of the flesh. So it's kind of a transcendence of these higher concepts of law, but they have simplified them to make you just a thing. Okay, because their master, the Pope, has declared us spiritless, unrighteous, soulless. So the Pope, the heretical churches have defined, because we don't agree with their spirituality.
When you say they, okay, George Webb was on my show, and I did an interview with him, and we discussed, they. So we're talking about, a very extreme sect of individuals within the NSA, the CIA, and all of these other people that are spying on us. They declare us as, non-moral people, and we're expendable. We're food eaters, or what do they call us?
Right.
And they're openly trading us within the courts. And this...
Well, yeah, because they believe, because we will not follow the Pope. Because we do not believe the Pope is the king of the world, okay? Because we don't believe that the cult of Rome, which, is fraught with pedophilia and abuses of women, which is what it's always been, because we are the true followers of Christ, who said Caesar is not our king, okay? We are of the lineage of people, the people who founded this country and this nation did not believe that the Pope was the king of the world or had any moral authority over any men than anybody. And they didn't believe that the king of England did either, nor the king of Norway or the king of France. None of those kings were anybody but figureheads that were of a guided system. But you were not obligated to follow their edicts as law, because often they are flawed, malfeasant men with corruptions within them who will do things for their own personal gain and lucre in the opposition to the will and the goodness of the people. So the people who founded this nation believe that...
Lotus, we define the corruption within the coup and the bar and the judiciary.
Oh, what
can we, the little people, do?
Well, I tell you what they can do. They can learn the truth of the matter in the law, and learn the law again, which is there's only 3 crimes in the law. There's only 3 crimes under the 4th crown of law. You can't do any harm to others, you can't disturb the public peace, and you can't disturb the public trust. Now, the word public is an important word in the common law, because in order for something to be public, 2 or more people must file an affidavit of complaint against you saying, this person is violating the public peace. This person has violated 2 or more. That's in the Bible. When 2 or more present things, it becomes facts of law. That is a fact. Those are the facts of law. our law, which guides the law of this land, says that if I don't harm someone,
I lost Lotus Justice. All right. I think my iPad battery died. I don't think it was some kind of conspiracy or coup or anything like that. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. I know this episode was a little bit heady, but we need to start having a more simplified understanding of the fourth crown and the two pillars of law. And it's essential, and I'm going to keep doing shows on this topic because I personally need to figure out how to simplify it and really present it to the masses that have so that everyone can understand it. It's quite heady topic. However, I think that, we do need to go into it because as we progress in realizing the level of corruption that's within our judiciary, this is going to become more and more relevant as we progress in this war. So everybody, please keep tuning into the show. My name is Amelia Duran. I am the host of Porthole to Justice. Lotus Justice is, she's a scholar in law. She also teaches as well. She holds, conventions and so forth. And, she's a public speaker and very well respected within her community as a, someone that also court watches as well. So, she's an oath minister of law. She has actual license to not practice law, but to, oversee that, this stuff isn't cool. What's going on in the courts right now is absolutely outrageous, egregious, and we've got to stop it because, and we need the people, consciousness amongst everybody is so important that everybody becomes aware that this is actively being waged within our courts, within the judiciary and the bar as well. There's a coup. There's an active coup. And we're just trying to explain it to you guys and bring it to you guys as it's happening. And hopefully you guys can learn more about this and understand. We'll be having more shows in the future. And you can subscribe to the Porthole to Justice on Spreaker.com. I'm also on Patreon. You can support my work. I profile convictions and indictments within the system. I continue to claim that this is not civilians committing these crimes against the people and the children. And I post this actively in the Porthole to Justice. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is Amelia Duran, your host, and this has been another episode of Porthole to Justice, the window to the truth, off the cuff.